tape with Meherwan Jessawala in Mandalay Hall, Merzad, November 21st, 1994. And you've been talking at the end of the previous tape about the opening of the Pune Center in 1994 and issues relating to the road.
Yeah. Yes. So, as I was saying, the approach road to the center was different when it was opened. Then in the later years, the KEM hospital wanted to expand its activities, and it had land on either side of the approach road. So they requested the center and the other three occupants of that piece of land by which the approach road, who were using that approach road, So they all agreed, and another road was shown to them, and then this was given away. But when they gave the other road, they had promised a wider road, but in fact they didn't stick to their promise and went back on their word, and so there was a lot of bickering and ill feeling. And then there was a washerman who was having an unauthorized structure there, which the KEM people wanted to thrust upon us for eviction. So it was not possible to evict him. More so because he put up the name of the laundries as Avatar Meher Baba Laundry or some such thing. So that's how people try to take advantage, And K.K. Ramakrishna, the secretary, was most upset about the whole thing. And there was a lot of unpleasantness throughout the whole history of this center, When this plot of land was in fact to be given for Pune Center, it was a big plot, right in the heart of the city. It was extremely strategic, a very, very busy locality, mind you. So today it's priceless, that land. So the Sardar Raste owned that piece of land, and Gadekar and then Ramakrishna and several other people who had influence with Sardar Raste. Kutum Shastri, who was the first chairman of Avatar Meher Baba Trust, they all took interest. They approached him, and he was immediately convinced about giving the land for Baba's center. The whole plot, mind you.
He just donated it.
So he said, yes, I am agreeable to do that. But before the center people could get the thing officially deeded to the trust, to the Meher Baba Center Trust, there were some old employees of Sardar Raste. They got wind of it. So they went that same night, and they convinced him into saying that, why give such a big lot? Why do you deprive us? We had served you so long. So please allow us to occupy a part of this plot. And so they wangled themselves inside overnight. So the next day when they tried to go and get the thing done, this was what had happened, and Sardar Raste said that, I feel that something should be given to them also. So nothing further could be done about it, because after all he was donating it. So we had to accept it, and they were not good neighbors. So there was endless trouble when the center was built and the garden was there, and they would come and create damage and all that.
Really? In the gardens?
So, and the privacy of the center was lost, as it were, because these people had their own entry from the same approach road. And so what would have been an ideal exclusive center use, and for future expansion and all that got ruined, And when after the plot was purchased, then of course funds were lacking. So then Jalbhai, Baba's brother, volunteered to get some funds for the center, and he went on a tour of Andhra Pradesh mostly, because most of the Andhra state is quite prosperous. It's quite fertile land there, and the people are quite well off. Unlike the north, where it's quite poor. So Jalbhai could get quite a lot of donation from outside Baba lovers also. Many from Pune, many of us donated. And so eventually there were sufficient funds to start the construction. And then Meherji was given the charge to get it constructed, and he had a friend who had built his factory. So that same contractor, his name was Meherwanji Merchant, Meherwanji, the same name as Baba's. So he was a very good person, but rather slow in his execution. So the construction work got protracted for quite a few years, and Ramakrishna was becoming impatient, and eventually, you see, the thing was that the land that was given was rich agricultural land. So when the foundations were dug, they had to go 10 feet just to strike hard rock. It was 10 feet of pure black cotton soil.
So it would have been a blessing for another purpose.
Oh yeah.
For a nuisance.
Yeah. So a lot of expenses went into the foundations, and that slowed the work considerably because of the excavation and all that. And Ramakrishna, not in the know of these things, was becoming impatient. But this man was a person quite thorough in his work, so he wouldn't hear about any people complaining. He just went on with his work. Eventually, Ramakrishna was so fed up that he said, no, and now we don't want to entrust any further work. So the slab was not laid till then. So then he got it done from some other contractor, and then he realized the difference of workmanship, because unending problems with the slab occurred. The walls were like a ancient castle, solid and firm, not a crack despite all this loose soil underneath. But the slab started to leak after a couple of monsoons, and it was a perennial problem for the center until they had to build a tin roof on top to avoid leakages. All sorts of things they did, but they couldn't stop the leakage. So a little impatience, and he had to pay the price of it. So all these things were there.
So all this had been going on prior to the opening.
And when after the opening also, always there would be feuds with the Baba people. And every time Baba would come to Guru Prasad, everything would come to a boil, as it were. And first thing Baba had to do was to call these people and settle their differences, get them together again, ask them to work in harmony, because after all it was Baba's cause they were serving, so they should drown their differences. So each year this would go on and on and on and on. So that was Pune Center.
You all weren't all that intimately connected with the Pune Center, were you?
Yeah, we were. In fact, we were the life members, most of us, yeah. And Baba had asked us also to visit the center as often as we could.
So you would go over,
yeah.
It was a couple kilometers from where you lived, 4 kilometers?
Less, yeah. So it was close by.
Yeah.
About a 15-minute walk.
Oh.
Yeah. quite close by. So, before this, mind you, the center was in, I think I'd mentioned this, there was Bapu Sahib Shinde who had his footwear shop, and the first Baba center was in his little shop.
Yeah.
So on Mondays his shop would be closed. So he would have all the people there in the closed shop, and few of us would be there. They would assemble and sing Baba's bhajans and all that, Madhusudan and all these people. But no room for people to sit, After all, it was a shop, a small shop. It was his first shop. After that, he got bigger accommodation elsewhere. But this also was in the heart of the city. And then, so later, there was one person, I think by the name Mr. Mudliar. He had a nice little cottage. So, which was close to the present Pune center. So there he said, why not have this meeting in my place? So then the venue got shifted to his house. He had a big hall, nice spacious hall, about 3/4 the size of this, and a little veranda outside where we could all collect. And we used to go there. And I remember one time during the house visits that Baba also went to this center. So he paid a visit to the Pune center first there actually. And the Mudliar family and all the neighbors had spread their lovely saris all the way from the road leading into their house, and strewn with rose petals and for Baba to walk upon. So I hope they have treasured those saris. Yeah, priceless things now, as Baba had tread upon them. Yeah, so that was where the center was. And a very tragic incident occurred there. The family was of course devoted to Baba, and every year Baba's birthday would be celebrated by them and the Pune center in their house. And he had a son who would be busy decorating the place. So I remember just a few days before one of Baba's birthdays in the 60s, he had climbed up on the scaffolding and was scraping the walls to paint them or something. And something happened and he slipped from quite a height, and he landed on his head with a loud thud, and he became unconscious. When they removed him to hospital, he had died by then. It was a terrible tragedy for the family, but still their love for Baba was so great that it did not prevent them from going ahead with Baba's birthday celebrations. Yeah. And I think Baba had sent a nice message for the family. Yes. That was their love for Baba. But eventually what happened was the place also began to fall short. So that's why then this new center came into being. And eventually that was opened by Baba.
Yeah. And that new center, it still is one of the largest centers I've seen.
Yeah, it's quite large. And then they expanded it to have accommodation on the first floor. Yeah. So Baba people could go and stay there. So it's going on nicely now. Yeah.
Quite a beautiful place, nice garden.
Yeah. So they tend to it very carefully.
Did Baba ever go back to that center?
Mudliar? The place? No. After opening this, that was it. Then Baba didn't go out much afterwards. Yeah, it was coming to the end of the external activities. So, and then whilst we are here, on that year in 64, another tragic incident concerned a Babar lover named Jal Dorabji. Now, Jal Dorabji was a school-time friend of Pendu, Padri, Adi and all these people. They all used, Pendu, Padri, they used to be in Pune, you know. So, they stayed quite close to each other, and Jal Dorabji also was quite close by, and they all used to go to the same school, and they were quite friendly with each other. This friendship was there even in later years, and Jal Dorabji came to love Baba, and so much so that first all the food would go from Bindra house for Baba and the Mandli. But later, when so many programs would be held in Guru Prasad, and more and more people would be called by Baba for having lunch or something, and then the pressure started to increase, and Najamai, who was sent to help prepare the food, could not take the strain any longer, and everybody was getting on in years also. So then Baba said that's it, now we'll get food from outside for the Mandli. Only Baba's food should come from Bindra house. So Jal Dorabji came to know about this, and he immediately offered to send food for Baba. He had a hotel, just behind the railway station there is a small building which was called Edward Hotel, and he was the owner of that hotel. And of course he had a hotel even on Dasturme Road near Baba's house, which is called Jimmy Lodge.
Oh yeah,
yes.
He owns that.
His son runs that. Jimmy was his son. So it was named Jimmy Lodge, and he used to stay in this Edward Hotel and also keep passengers there for boarding and lodging. Nice homely feeling. And he would cook for his clients and all that. So he said, Baba, it's no problem for me. I have big vessels and this is my daily job. So I'll just donate food. So Baba says, no donation, you have to take something. So he says, all right, Baba, I'll take 1 rupee per head. So Baba says, all right. So that was the fee that he charged to supply food to each one, and sumptuous meals would come. Yeah, he was also a caterer for Parsi weddings and Parsi thread ceremonies at that time. So he would take the contract to supply food for the guests, So then first thing he would do would be to send the food from that to Guru Prasad at the same subsidized rate. So the Mandli would have occasional feasts also.
Happy days for the Mandli.
Yeah.
Sounds like as far as food goes.
Happy days are here again.
From fast to
feast.
To fast.
Yeah. So Jal Dorabji was a nice person. Very large-hearted, yeah. So lavish food would be supplied. And then one day we got the news in this period only, in 64 I think, that he suddenly lost his daughter and granddaughter in a drowning accident. She had been married to a man called Keki Bilimoria. So they used to stay in Bombay. She was a beautiful looking girl with blonde hair and blue eyes and all that, quite fair. And Jal Dorabji was very fond of her. And they had gone on a boating expedition to Elephanta Caves off Bombay coast. it's a tourist attraction. So on the way, something happened to the yacht, and some accident occurred, and so many people got drowned, in which the wife of this man, which is Jal Dorabji's daughter, she got drowned, and also her little 1-year-old daughter. So it was a double tragedy. That's the son-in-law, I don't know how he survived. Probably he swam ashore. He was a strapping, good-looking fellow. Yeah. But somehow he was not on the boat, I'm not sure. But I think he was there and he swam ashore or something happened. And there was a lot of sadness in the family. So despite the seclusion, Baba asked the family to come over. And they were in the hall one day. We were there. And so Baba consoled them. And after they left, the son-in-law says that what a peaceful feeling I had. All that grief and feeling of hurt that I had simply disappeared while I was in his presence. And how peaceful I am feeling here. I wish I had come earlier, because a year earlier when the darshans were going on, his wife had come for Baba's darshan. And she tried to persuade him to come also, but he refused. So he said that I wish I had listened to my wife and had come with her. But it's this tragedy which has brought me into the presence of such a being. So, yes, that's what he had mentioned to his father-in-law.
Does he still come from time to time?
I haven't seen him after that, I think. Probably, I don't know, because there were other darshan programs later. He may have come, but I don't have any recollection of that. But I recollect this tragic incident. And another one also occurred at that time was regards Shatrughna Kumar. You know, the other day we mentioned about the tragedy that happened to his son. You see, his son, his name was Prashant. And this boy was quite young, in his early 20s or I think late teens. And he was employed in some mines in Bihar or something. And he was not keeping good health there. So Baba was at Guru Prasad, Kumar was there. So this boy was to take leave and go back home for some rest. So Baba said, call the boy here. So the boy was called to Guru Prasad. And I remember he came that day and he wasn't well. He seemed to be having a little fever. The next day he was having high fever or something. So Baba asked Kumar to take him to the hospital. And so he was shifted to this clinic, Jahangir Nursing Home, as far as I remember. So then he was admitted to that place, and they took some tests and it was found that he had leukemia. Yes. So just see how Baba had him called just in the nick of time. And Baba went to see him there in the hospital and said not to worry, constantly to think of him, because the doctor said it was in a very advanced stage and he had not many days to live.
In those days, treated.
There was no treatment actually. So, and especially for young people, when they had it, it was invariably fatal. So, in I think a couple of weeks, he just died there. So now the problem was to inform his mother, So his mother was in Dehradun. So Baba says, just send a telegram to her to call her to Guru Prasad, not to mention anything else, that Baba wants her to come and see him. So she came very happily to be in Baba's presence. And I think my mother was also called, and to break the news gently, as women could do. And Eraj was there, and so gently it was given out to her. And then Baba, of course, was there, and she cried a lot, and then she remained resigned to his will, and somehow she was consoled. And in Baba's presence, of course, all these tragedies, they just lose their sting, So,
which Kumar is this? Is it not Amrit's father?
Amrit's father.
So this was Amrit's brother who...
That's right, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, Amrit must be small, quite small then, yeah.
She might have been born, it seems like at the beginning of the new life, one night she was in the room with Baba overnight, some such thing.
Amrit?
Yeah, some such story. So she might have been around 13 or 15 or something.
At this time?
At this time.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
Yes.
Later on she got married to Dara.
Yeah.
So, yes, so, yeah, must be that, she must be about 13 or 14, because I think in 68 she got married.
Right, early December.
So about 4 years later.
Yeah.
That's right. So this thing happened, and then she was happy there. Baba kept her for a few days at Guru Prasad, and then sent her back. And one of those days, I remember we were sitting there, and Baba, there was this big hoopla ring, and Baba tells Kumar, come on, get up and do the hoopla you
hula
call
hoop. We call it
hula
hoop.
Oh, hula hoop. So do that dance before me. So that was the first time I saw that
The hula hoop.
hula hoop dance.
You call it the hoopla?
Hoopla ring we used to call it. So he wiggled all along and did a very energetic dance to keep the ring in movement. And just to make him celebrate the occasion, as it were, of his son's death in Baba's vicinity. Yeah, it was fortunate for his son.
Must have been his good fortune, in fact.
That Baba saw him in his last days. So, but Kumar never showed any emotion. He was quite stable. Yeah. So, such were the things that were happening at that time. Then, of course, the other tragedy was Nehru.
Yeah.
So, one day in May, I think it was, I don't remember the exact date. I think you mentioned.
Was it April 26th or something? Let's see.
May 20.
May
I think some date in May. So.
You're right, 26th May.
That's right, 26th May.
Yeah.
I was in the office in the New India Insurance Company working. And suddenly we hear a big commotion outside, and a person with a loud gong leading a rabble, as it were, and asking the offices to close down. So our people rushed out and asked what had happened. And he said, don't you know Pandit Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru has died. Shut your office. So of course, we had the office shut, and then our boss came and we were given the day off in mark of respect.
Was it a surprise, or had it been anticipated because of his bad health?
No, it was total surprise because he suddenly died. He had a stroke, but they had kept it quiet. Yeah, they had kept quiet over the affair and not informed the public too much. They were apprehensive about informing the public because then there was this battle of succession, and quite a tussle occurred after Nehru died. So I immediately phoned Guru Prasad, and Iraj came on the line, and I told him that, have you heard this has happened? He says, no. Then he went and informed Baba about it. And it seems that a day or two before, Baba just began to ask Iraj, supposing if Nehru suddenly comes here to have my darshan, how would it be? So Iraj says, Baba, that's not possible because there's a lot of protocol involved. There would be security and this and that. And he couldn't come suddenly like that for your darshan. So Baba says, oh, it was just a sort of passing casual remark. Yeah. But when he died in a day or two, then the import of this remark was felt, because who knows that his soul must have come to pay the respects to Baba here, and so had his darshan all of a sudden. So such casual remarks of his, eventually we realize what they mean.
Baba spoke very highly of
and then Baba gave a nice remark about how Nehru was a true karma yogi, and India was fortunate to have such a leader, and that
matchless statement. India will have to wait for another 700 years to find another jewel like him.
That's right. He mentioned that. So that was a great compliment from the Lord himself. That bespeaks of Nehru's greatness. He was a great leader and was loved by the people immensely. There was no question. He was tremendously popular. And so while he was there, the Congress had no difficulty in just bulldozing the opposition in the elections.
There was no question of his getting re-elected. He always was.
So as long as he was there, there was quite a lot of stability in the Congress government. But after he left, then there was a lot of tussle. And of course, he, like a true Democrat, had never named any successor or any such thing. And then there was a democratic election in the party, and Lal Bahadur Shastri was elected to be the Prime Minister. And he proved quite capable. Despite being a very small-statured man, and his looks belied his real stature, So he even conducted a war very successfully a year later against Pakistan. But the strain was too much for him, and he died very soon thereafter. So again, there was another tussle for leadership and all that. So after Nehru, then this all started.
It seems that generation of the leadership of India was very blessed in having a certain closeness to Baba. Gandhi, of course, with his many contacts, and Nehru, I guess, through association with Gandhi.
That's right. And there was this Sardar Amar Singh Saigal. He was quite closely related to Nehru because of from the time of the British, they were in the liberation movement and all that. So they were great friends, and he was a great ardent lover of Baba, and forcefully brought Baba's messages and name to most of the government people. So in those times we had a lot of ministers participating in Baba's birthday celebrations, silence anniversaries. You will read quite a lot of involvement with government people.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, these were all sorts of things that were happening in 1964 when Baba was not giving public darshans, but such things were happening. And of course, at Guru Prasad, the routine would be that Baba would be having his usual exercise on the veranda. We would, few of us would be there. We would play cards with him. There would be reading of correspondence and newspaper reading and so on. Just the usual thing. I think I had mentioned about Baba taking exercise on the veranda with that perambulator, and a big stone was placed to balance it. And Deshmukh, of course, always had the privilege to, even when Baba was not giving darshan, he could always come. So when he had the vacation, and Baba would be at Guru Prasad at that time for the summer vacations, so he would come and stay with the Mandali. And one of these walks, he starts envying that stone on the perambulator. And Baba says, come on, I'll also make you lucky. And asks him to sit on the perambulator. And Baba pushes him. He looked so comic.
Oh, what a funny that must have been. But he was quite
unfazed, yes. He was quite a character, I tell you. There are so many humorous incidents about him. For instance, there's a very comic incident I remember when Baba was in Dehradun in the early years, and he had gone there for spending the vacation there. And there were quite a lot of mango trees growing there. So Baba had given orders to the Mandali that nobody should ever pluck mangoes from the trees. But if they fell on the floor, then they were free to grab them. So the main grabbers were Gustadji and Baidul. They were great lovers of mangoes. So night and day their attention would be on falling mangoes. As soon as they heard a little thud, both would rush out and start to... whoever got the mango first was the owner of that mango.
Your rivals.
Yeah. So funny thing happened. One night, it was quite hot, they said, and Deshmukh, finding it so hot, there was a terrace onto that building. So Deshmukh climbed up the terrace with his big bedding roll, and he said, I'll have a nice sleep up there. It would be cool. So he goes and sleeps on the terrace up there. And every night, Baidul and Gustadji would keep vigil. For most of the mangoes would fall in the night. And they would grab these mangoes, So they didn't even sleep well. Because the mango season would soon be over. So they were all keen, both of them were quite keen. So they would sit quite late into the night outside, waiting for these mangoes to fall. So Gustadji describes that one night, as he was keeping vigil for the mangoes, and Baidul, of course, from some other place, and suddenly what happened was it started to rain because of the heat, So the clouds gathered and it suddenly began to rain. So Deshmukh was up there unprotected, and he started getting wet. So now it was quite a sharp shower. So to cut short time, he just quickly rolled up his huge bedding and just threw it from the terrace. And it landed a few inches away from where Gustaji was sitting. So Gustaji describes the incident that as the bedding roll landed, he jumped up to the terrace height from the great shock of it. And in the dead of night, suddenly he finds some big object coming crashing down with a big loud thump. And so scared was he, and also Baidul nearby, that they both gave up their nightly vigils after that. So that was Deshmukh. And another comic incident of Deshmukh was also in Dehradun. So the Mandali got together an act. They said, this time we'll fool Deshmukh. We'll make a real fool out of him. So that the plot was that whenever Deshmukh would be there and Baba was not with the Mandali, then they would pretend to be all muss. So, and only one person was supposed to be sane. I don't know, it was Bhau or somebody.
Bhau.
Bhau, huh? Yeah. Because he was new, and the rest of the Mandali were veterans, so they had all been promoted to planes.
Oh, I see the logic.
Yeah. So then it was given out by Bhau that, look, this has happened, so you don't be frightened. These people behave like that. As soon as Baba leaves the Mandali quarters and for the women's quarters, then these people get into these intoxicated moods. So this is what is happening. And then they would behave like queer people, and Don would be, Donkin was also there. So they would call him Don. So Don would come on all his fours while Deshmukh was having his food and start growling. And Deshmukh would get scared. He would take up his plate and go back and then start running. And Don would be chasing him. And this went on and on,
So they were convincing enough to pull it.
Yeah. And as soon as Baba came, they were all quite normal, and he was really puzzled. So he never asked Baba about this, and Baba also never broached the subject, for some reason or the other. And Bhau mentions to me that Deshmukh was fully convinced that they were all promoted to planes, to the higher planes. And for many years thereafter, he was convinced that this had happened, despite their telling him afterwards, but he wouldn't listen.
Oh, that must have been a sight.
Yeah.
I would love to have seen it.
Very funny. How Deshmukh would be frightened out of his wits' ends, to be with the Mandali when Baba left. He would start shaking in his shoes. And they would make it more and more difficult for him, the poor guy.
He seems to have been one of these people who, without exactly telling jokes or knowing how to deliberately be funny, seems to have been the occasion of so much humor.
Yeah. Because the way he would behave in front of Baba was really comic. So in Guru Prasad also, he would suddenly get up while a singing program was going on and says, Baba, I have the urge to sing also, and would go off into a tangent, some awful notes he would bring out, and Baba would say, sit down, Deshmukh, don't interrupt. And so this became so frequent that Baba then tells Jimmy, Jimmy Mystery. He says, now it's your duty. Every time the program is there, you have to sit close to Deshmukh. And if you allow him to get up and sing, then the punishment will be that you will have to sing along with him in front of the crowd. So Jimmy tells us that after that, all his stay was totally spoiled. All the while he had to concentrate on Deshmukh, and Deshmukh would keep jumping up, and Jimmy had to restrain him. And it was such a funny sight, both these people sitting together and Jimmy all the while seeing him, not concentrating on Baba, not concentrating on the singing. So, a very irascible sort of chap he was. One day Baba tells Deshmukh, look, can you see Dr. Alu sitting there? Isn't she beautiful? Would you like to marry her? Yes, Baba, if you say. And poor Alu, she said, when she heard that, she began to have beads of perspiration. But then Baba says, what about your Indutai? What will she say if you marry her? Oh, Baba, nothing. I'll say that you said, then I'll just convince her. But then she'll beat you. No, Baba, nothing. I'm ready for it. Quite serious, huh? Yeah. So, anything he was just ready for whatever Baba would say.
I have to say that the work that he did on the discourses was splendid.
Yeah.
I mean, very good at what he did.
The English, the ideas that he brought out of Baba, to put them in this modern sort of language.
Oh, superb.
Yeah. It's really beautiful.
Were there other people who fell into his category? Who are the others who had that latitude just to come whenever they were free? I mean, it seems like that's would be an enviable spot to
I
be.
think later on Balnatu was also given that, because after the new life, Baba, I think, allowed him to be, whenever he had occasion to be, like vacations, and they used to have long vacations for schools, and Balnatu was another person who used to come frequently, yeah. And perhaps other people, yeah. So these things would go on, yeah. There are so many stories of Deshmukh. Yeah, he is a real character. Irrepressible. Yes, so then I think nothing much was there in 64. There was another comic incident, I think, about Deshmukh. Once Baba said, we'll try to fool Deshmukh. It was April Fool's Day, I think. And Deshmukh had come to Guru Prasad, and so they had prepared they had dressed up a big rock, in good fancy paper, lots of coverings, one on the top of the other, and made a big presentable article. And when he came and sat before Baba, and Baba says, I give you this as a present. So he takes it and just keeps it aside, and then starts to look at Baba. So then Baba tells Erich. So Erich gets the hint and says, Deshmukh, won't you like to see what Baba has given you for the gift? Oh, he says, I can see later. No, see, Baba would like you to see it. So he's persuaded to open it, and he keeps opening one layer after the other. And inside comes out this big stone, black rock. And he says, oh, how blessed I am, he says. That Baba has given me such a present that it will never deteriorate. So he had his laugh in front of all of them,
Did he? Was he serious?
Serious, yeah.
So they tried to pull it down, but the joke backfired.
And it was so true, because a stone is the ultimate thing, the most gross object.
Yeah.
And Baba giving him a present which will never deteriorate. So they were all stunned by this reply from Deshmukh. So such was his caliber. Yeah. Yes, so I think 1964 was, and then one more thing I remember, was about Joseph Hab. Joseph Hab was allowed to come and settle down in Pune. I think I mentioned that the previous year.
Yeah.
Now, after coming to India, it seems while in the States also he was having a lot of trouble with his gallbladder.
Yeah.
And after settling down in Pune, it seems it got worse to a point where he went to get himself examined. And they said that the only solution was surgical removal of the gallbladder because it was just full of stones. And he was in great pain and couldn't eat properly. So, and who knows, it could be malignant. So he was quite scared and he didn't know whether to go back to the States. So Baba called him one day and said, "What is it?" Then he said that this is what has been said. So Baba said, "Go ahead with the operation." And there was a very skillful surgeon called Dr. Gharpure. And Baba said that he's very good and my nazar will be there. Just go ahead, nothing will be wrong. There's no cancer there. Go ahead and get it done. So then Joseph Hab went there and sure enough it was a very good operation. That surgeon was really skillful. And Joseph Hab was back on his feet and quite happy that he had got it done here. Of course, at a fraction of the cost of what would it had been had it been in the States. And besides, Baba was there. Baba went to see him, I think in the hospital also. So in this respect, it was an eventful stay in Guru Prasad. Yeah. But then after that, Joseph Hab was not very happy with his stay in India because the climate didn't suit him, and also Carrie Hab was not keeping well, his wife.
Yeah.
She had this emphysema trouble. So then eventually they decided to return back and they returned home again. So that was their brief interlude in India.
And then Sufis under Ivy Deuce.
I think so, yeah.
Do you remember anything about Shanti Devi's coming to Guru Prasad in that year?
Well, I can't recollect it. Yes, she was allowed to visit Baba's, so she must have come for the days that she was allowed. Yeah. And I used to remember when we were with Baba, a few of us, and she would come in and be with Baba for some time. Then Baba would send her inside to be with the women. Yeah. And it would be a nice visit, yeah. So, but I don't recollect exactly when it was and which years.
But it would probably be a more memorable incident for the women since they would have spent time.
Naturally, yeah. But she would spend time with Baba in the Mandali side also. Yeah.
You know, I'm also struck that in one of the family letters for this year of 1964, Mani accompanies with the family letter a copy of a circular sent out by Adi warning people about Krishnaji. Now, it strikes me that that's quite a step to take to impose such a circular.
Yeah, because, this Krishnaji, I think I'd mentioned some humorous stories about him also. With Gustadji and all that. So he was a sort of rather unpopular person with the Mandali.
The story of Baba making up the fib of his walking around in Gustadji's clothes.
Yeah, that's right. Eraj writing a postcard or something. That was very comic. Really comic, I tell you. How Gustadji flared up with that. He hated that sort of thing that would happen to his clothes, which was sacred to him. None was allowed to even see the trunk, and this man goes and opens his trunk and wears those clothes. Those clothes are now to be burned. Yeah. So Krishnaji, was a sort of erratic person, and he took advantage of his stay with Baba.
Yeah.
And despite Baba trying to get rid of all his undesirable qualities, as one may say, so he was not changing his ways. And
those being to behave like a master.
Yeah. He had his own ego there, and he was not willing to follow Baba's orders, which is the main thing that one has to do when one wants to stay with Baba.
Yeah.
But despite that, probably what sanskarik good sanskars he must be having, that Baba allowed him to stay with the Mandali for so many months, or probably a year or so. I don't remember how long, but it was quite an extended stay he had. And my first impression of him was when there was this Savas in 1958, I think, or thereabouts, and he just got up once in the meeting and started to lead a prayer and made all the assembly follow his prayers.
Without having been asked by Baba
to do this. Which seemed very odd to me. What is this happening? And so, you see, right from the early stages, he was trying to assert himself quite a bit. And of course the Mandali didn't like all that, but because Baba tolerated it, so they just wouldn't say anything. And this went on. In fact, Bhau was ordered to serve this man as a menial servant, mind you. So for many months he had to do all sorts of menial jobs for this man, and until one day Baba just asked him to leave the place, and he left. But after leaving the place, then he started to do all sorts of silly things, like giving out to the people that he was observing silence, and he started to have a board like Baba's, and imitating Baba in all the ways that he saw while he was with Baba. So that was a very bad thing he was doing, and he knew about other Baba people, and he tried to go there and lure them away from Baba. So it went to such an extent that lots of complaints began to come to Baba that this is happening. So eventually then this circular was sent out that none should follow so-called masters, and then Krishnaji was specifically mentioned, I think, in the circular. And it was quite tragic. And Kumar, Shatrughna Kumar, he was also with the Mandali at that time, and he had a great dislike for this man. So of course with Baba he couldn't do anything. But once he came here, and he happened to read this board, now this board, this brown background, it's a poem from the perfect master Tukaram, and I'll just read it for you. It says, Vadhuni jata launi arakha bhundu jan lok nana pari. Vadhuni means increase, lengthening the length of the hair. Jata means hair. And launya rak means ashes, applying the ashes on their body and keeping long hair. Bhundu jan lok nana pari. There are many false saints who proliferate in the world. Tuka mane jaro hyanche antakarana. So Tuka says, may their conscience be burnt. Tyasi tadana dosha nahi. And to beat such people is not at all a sin. So that last line was immediately Kumar pricked up his ears.
So he saw this here.
Yeah, he saw this here. He saw that this was a sanction from Baba, But mind you, Baba had given him an order never to lift his hand to assault anybody. After that incident when he slapped his wife, in the early days, for some reason that she didn't prepare food for Baba in time or some such thing had happened, and then Baba had given him this order. But here he thought that here is a loophole. But it's in Baba's Mandli Hall, and this is a sanction from Baba. So when after his stay here, he went back to his hometown. But on the way, he went to the place where this fellow was staying. I think it was in Delhi at that time. And he was masquerading like Baba, and he was doing more and more of this stuff. So all this anger was piling up within him. And so he went there and he confronted him, and he says, either you stop all this nonsense or I'll beat you up. So of course that fellow must have spoken rudely with Kumar, and so they had a physical fight, and Kumar roundly thrashed him. Kumar was a very strong person, although he was small of stature, but he was this underground revolutionary, and they are wiry people. Their looks belie their strength and other characteristics. So he was soundly beaten by Kumar, and then he says, now I'll kill you, otherwise you come and get yourself married with this woman. He was sort of keeping a woman there and having affairs with her, and it was a very, very sordid affair. So then he got them married. That fellow got really frightened, and he acceded to all of Kumar's requests under duress and did what he said. But then Baba came to know about this, and Kumar got a sound berating from Baba. Yeah, for doing this sort of thing. Baba didn't approve of it at all. Baba didn't like it. Yeah.
Of his getting involved in the whole mess.
And breaking Baba's order, Yeah. Despite the loophole he could detect. So I don't know what punishment he was meted out, but I heard that Baba didn't approve of it.